which is a good space to be in. I get that feeling when I look at the ancient cultures. They too regarded themselves as part of a bigger whole. And with that mindset, you've got this sacredness again. The land is sacred, and I'm part of it. So therefore, I must be sacred, which is...
Basically says the same thing, that ancient sites of power were sometimes found and sometimes deliberately constructed to mimic or enhance what could be found in nature. In either case, the forces of the natural world were used, and they were used for a variety of purposes, such as the promotion of fertility and for healing, but the overriding purpose was the need to have gateways through which contact with spirit could be achieved. In the ancient world, there were certain people who knew how to work with the physical world in order to create access to the spiritual. So there's like a combination of different things at play here. The same principles that would enhance your seeds and grains, and this has been tested scientifically, would enhance your brain chemistry and affect your different glands in your brain and give you out-of-body and visionary experiences. And so let's move on.
The Koolewong rock shelter on the central coast of New South Wales. This sacred space was used for focusing sound to generate energy using the laws of nature. This energy was used for brainwave entrainment and consciousness management through entraining specific cortical rhythms for the purpose of exploration of expanded states of consciousness. This site was a part of the energetic sciences and practice of the ancestors, and this is to improve future research and understanding of this sacred space.
Is alive, these different aspects are alive, but I guarantee there are places where this magnetism, these telluric currents and these energies were affecting their consciousness, and they were able to then gain access to these other realms. And even in the modern version of geomancy is alive, these different aspects.
What happens in your body when sound is made, whether you're making it with your own voice or whether you're receiving sound from somebody else, is that every single membrane in your body, and don't forget every cell has a membrane around it, will receive a pattern of energy from that sound source, whatever it is.
They took the time to find specific locations with good acoustic properties within the area for the generation of sound energy for their spiritual sciences of acoustic-induced altered states of consciousness practices. The Koolewong rock shelter being one of those chosen locations. Once you start seeing these interesting patterns all over this country, you start to see these sites were also used for something completely different. Remember, we are dealing with sound and the generation of sound energy, resonance and frequency. That's what this is all about as well.
Until they embrace a concept of a ether and a consciousness-based universe, they're pretty much going in down a dead-end street.
About a very, very interesting sub-discipline in the study of anthropology and archaeology having to do with sound and prehistory. About a very, very interesting sub-discipline in the study of anthropology and archaeology having to do with sound and prehistory.
Basic physics? You understand what outer space is? Like, it feels like, how much do we have to really dumb this down? Like, okay, we are on Earth. We live in a system called a solar system filled with planets around a star. And everything between all of these planets is called outer space. Wow, okay. And in this outer space, it's not just empty. It's not really a vacuum. It's filled with energy. Just like how when you're a fish underwater in the ocean, you would think that all there is the water. But it would look like it's empty to you because you're going through it all the time. You don't even realize it. You just think that water is all there is. It's the same thing that we're experiencing on this planet Earth with the air and with outer space itself. Energy is everywhere. And it can be extracted.
The ancestors increased internal energy with enough people created sound vibrations. And those sound vibrations combining with the natural acoustics of the site, this increased the internal energy of the Koolewong rock shelter's space. The acoustic waves the ancestors generated are vibrations that travelled through the Koolewong rock shelter medium. They are also known as sound waves. They cause the particles of the Koolewong rock shelter medium to compress and expand. The acoustic waves or sound waves that the ancestors generated are characterized by properties like acoustic pressure, particle velocity and acoustic intensity. They are characterized by their frequency, amplitude, wavelength and speed. If you generate a sound wave, then that wave carries energy, so it will heat transfer anything that absorbs the sound, including the ancestors. Another factor for the generated process was that the charcoal and midden and heat essentially created a different medium for the sound vibrations, which helped to keep some of that vibrational energy in the sandstone by vibrating the wall and space by reflection and refraction rather than all of the energy being dissipated into the atmosphere. The midden was purposely placed so they could manipulate and direct certain energies into the location of the space they desired.
Also because the space is reverberative, and that's not accidental. Those spaces were deliberately designed to be reverberative. But also because the space is reverberative, and that's not accidental. Those spaces were deliberately designed to be.
What's archaeoacoustics?
Another name for archaeoacoustics is acoustic archaeology, and basically it has to do with the study of sound in relationship to archaeology and the past. And it's just a really long word that means let's listen to what our ancestors might have been aware of and interested in.
Under the Koolewong rock shelter's system conditions, the ancestors did a kind of meditative technique that helped push along their nervous system, while at the same time the ancestral songmen were putting frequencies either subliminally in their songs or change the scale of their music to create harmony and coherence in the individual and the site at the same time, because there was active movement towards creating harmonious frequencies, binaural beats for example, because they understood the consciousness code, sound, frequency and synchronicity. While under these conditions, the ancestors used smoke to faintly visualize sound waves in the air of the Koolewong rock shelter, but only under specific conditions and with careful observation. As the disturbances caused by sound waves are very subtle and require specialized techniques, essentially the smoke was slightly disturbed by the passing sound waves, allowing the ancestors to see a very faint ripple effect, because they had a great close attention to detail and were masters at observation. They created a dark space within a focused light source behind a smoke-filled area, and generated a loud, consistent sound near the smoke and carefully watched the smoke patterns, looking for very subtle ripples or disturbances that might correspond to the sound waves. Kind of like being in a church with a choir singing and the priest doing his smoking business, same thing. The act of burning incense in a church is called censing, and people have reported seeing sound waves while the choir is singing. Smoke helped them to see sound waves in the Koolewong rock shelter.
Now, having had this thought about perhaps some kind of a sonic ritual that took place in... Now, having had this thought about perhaps some kind of a sonic ritual that took...
A percussion sound, just a loud kind of clapping sound that is over with very quickly and covers all the frequencies and the hearing range. And then what happens after that, and you are recording any reflections that come back as a result of sound reflecting surfaces.
Under the conditions of the smoke and focus light and other energetic practices or work going on, the imagery helped trigger altered states of consciousness and lucid dreaming while at the site. Every frequency has a specific shape or pattern, and the brain is hardwired to recognize patterns. The brain uses the same processes to recognize faces in everyday objects as it does of real faces. Most people never heard of pareidolia, but nearly everyone has experienced it. Pareidolia is a tendency to see patterns or objects in things. Pareidolia is the tendency for perception to impose a meaningful interpretation on a nebulous stimulus, usually visual, so that one detects an object, pattern or meaning where there is none.
An entoptic phenomena is something that's associated with altered states of consciousness. Basically, you got symbols that you see in your cerebral cortex, in your mind's eye. As you go into altered states of consciousness, they would be chevrons, little inverted V's. You'd have concentric circles, semicircles, spirals. You'd have all these weird symbols.
The depiction of fish is a representation of what they were visioning while experiencing the second stage of altered states of consciousness. So the second stage is when the ancestors were interpreting the visions as culturally familiar contents. The images of what the ancestors were visioning. By incorporating angles, why the fish and other images are not perfect. Are the images turning clockwise or anti-clockwise? No, this is not a story, this is a vision and a tool to help others share and trigger similar visions when at this site. This wasn't to tell them where the best fishing spot was. They already knew, they didn't have to be told. And this wasn't someone telling you his story about the catch of the day. What about the generations before and after? What makes his catch so special? Why isn't there artwork on every single rock from the generations before and after telling their stories? No, it was at this site for a reason. Remember, they had an obsession with the spiritual realm and an obsession with practicing and improving their techniques for exploring and navigating and ways to induce deeper trance state experiences. This idea that the site was for telling you where the best hotspot to go fishing at, or this fella got to be the only one out of hundreds or thousands of people to be able to tell his story about the catch of the day, is still caught in the 1900s or even 1800s interpretation. Truth, remember, does not contain any fear. It is the practice of the ancestors to lift themselves into a higher consciousness to connect with the spiritual realm directly. And the Koolewong rock shelter was a tool to help them have a direct connection to the spiritual realm and the power of turning inward. It was a site of seeking the higher mind and of inducing and navigating and finding the spiritual realm within through becoming one within that experience. We are honouring the stories, practices and the sites of those who came before us, and the Koolewong site is part of the ancestors' consciousness code. Sound, frequency and synchronicity.
Myro Beat.